again, such an honour to interview debut writers because it's such an exciting time in their journey. They're no longer just starting out, they've been published, but they have all these mountains yet to climb. Daniel Tamone, welcome.
Thank you.
Whose novel is called The Fists of the Father. Hold that up for us. It is a book about, actually really interesting. When I was looking at it originally, when I was asked to do this session, I looked online, it said it's a book about boxing. It's not at all. It's a book about fathers and sons and the competition between them and intergenerational trauma. And it is profoundly moving in ways that because you've used some literary devices in there that are so clever. I really enjoyed it so much. Please welcome Daniel.
Thank you.
And the magnificent Deborah Pike, a local, I believe, from Pearl Beach, living here in Pearl Beach, and author of The Players. Would you mind holding that up? An absolutely beautiful cover. Actually, that book was just delivered to me, I think, last week. It came across my desk, and I remember thinking what a gorgeous cover it was. It is about a group of students who come together to rehearse a play. They're not young, they're in their late teens, early 20s, I think we'd say. They come together to rehearse a play, and then the story follows them throughout their life as they move in and out of each other's orbit. Please welcome Deborah.
Thank you.
Now, earlier on, I mentioned such a special treat for me, in particular as a literary editor and an old lady, to talk to debut writers, because it's such a thrilling moment in your life, you know, when you receive that call to say that somebody wants your book. But as we said, the idea behind these sessions, or the theme of these sessions, is that it starts with an idea. So, Daniel, let's go with you first. What was your idea?
Well, I'd always had this idea of, you know, there's a lot of interest in sort of boxing and sport movies, but I've never really seen that in the book format. And I had this idea that's not too unrealistic, where you could have a father and son both competing at the highest level of any sport, really. I thought boxing's, you know, a great way to sort of bring two people very close together, and I think having a dynamic between a father and son in a, you know, a troubled past that they have, I just thought that was a great idea to build a story from.
And you are not yourself a boxer. I understand you play rugby, but you're not yourself a boxer, is that right?
No, I did dabble a little bit in sort of 12, 13 in some sparring, but thankfully I didn't go down that path.
Ignoring the whole right what you know thing as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I did play sort of rugby league and rugby union since I was 7 or 8, up until only a couple of years ago. So some experience in, I guess, that sporting arena. But
hyper masculine, because it's such a masculine book, that sense of contest between father and son I found really difficult to absorb. I mean, really thrilling to read, but difficult. And tell me, it starts with an idea. What was your idea, Deborah?
Well, I was living and working in Paris at the time, and I took a trip to Amsterdam just for a break because I was fairly exhausted. It was one of those cheap junkets that, you know, those $2 flights that you used to be able to get. And I just had a vision just upon touchdown of these young people putting on a play, coming together. They're all from very diverse backgrounds. And I saw the Australian bush, and then I kind of saw them spinning out all over the world. And so it was just like this singular vision. I thought, well, why don't I pursue that and see what kind of story will come out of that? So, yeah.
And academia is part of the setting, and you yourself are an academic, is that right?
Well, I teach literature at university. Yes, I've done lots of different things, but yes, that's one of my
And so
jobs.
were you looking at your students as possible characters at the time, or only in retrospect?
Not at all, no, not really. The half of the book, some of them are students, not all of them. They end up rehearsing in an orchard, and so it's set really a good part of it in the hills of Western Australia, in Perth. But I think mainly from being a student, they were just such vivid days. And, you know, as you grow older, life gets, you know, busy, you're full of obligations, and perhaps I became a bit nostalgic for those times in your life when you can explore and experiment and find out who you are with this bright vividness. And I wanted to evoke that and visit that and see how those moments, involved, like putting on a play or being involved in a community event, can actually affect you for the rest of your life. You can make friends, you can learn things, you can transform, you can have a lot of fights, you can get upset, you can fall in love, you can feel rejected, but that can kind of spin out over a lifetime. So the book traces them over the next 10 years. So that's what I was interested in. Have I used my students? I don't think so. I hope not. But they're actually a source of eternal inspiration, so maybe.
Of course. And Daniel, the idea that you might start to write a book about a father and a son and boxing is one thing. But to actually get in there and do it, and then to try to pitch that idea, tell me how you went about that.
Yeah, so I had a go at writing a few different novels, and I read a lot of sort of fantasy and sci-fi, and probably wrote things that I was too out of my depth of when it comes to, and sort of thought a few times I was onto something, and in hindsight I was nowhere near where they needed to be. And then it wasn't until I kind of got an assessment back with some feedback on another novel, which was a real kick in the guts in terms of how honest that feedback was, and sort of setting a bar of where I was actually at, that I just thought, well, what's something I can just actually write about, set in a world that I live in, and all I need to bring to life is the characters rather than everything around it. So being able to have that idea of the family dynamic and put that in a world I knew, I think that just helped me get the momentum I needed to sort of carry it all the way through.
And I think one of the fascinating things about your book is the structure. Can you talk a little bit about that, that idea of starting chapters with the idea of a boxing bell going off, like a ding, and then they get into it? That's kind of such a good idea.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'd be a good movie director. When I think about the different scenes and how it would look, I like the idea of using that ding to start off the boxing match as like a transition between scenes, and almost kind of, sucking you into that moment. So even though there's a lot of pages, or most of the pages aren't set within a boxing ring, often there's a boxing match-like tension between the characters, particularly the father and son, because they have had a troubled past and haven't seen each other for a long time. It's almost like that first meeting is like going into a boxing match, so to speak.
And it really helps build the tension in the book, because the idea is that there's somebody who wants a father-son boxing match. And so you, as a reader, you know how rough these guys are, and you know what a troubled background they have together, what a troubled relationship they have together. In the back of mind, you're always thinking, are they going to be punching on? Like that's what drives the narrative. And I thought that was incredibly sophisticated for a debut novelist.
Thank you.
And I'll try to add a question to that. And tell me about structure and plotting and planning for you, because again, your book requires a lot of things to happen at a certain time for it to work. So tell us about that.
Yes, well, it's a novel with multiple points of view for a start, and I really wanted to explore all these different characters' experience of being in the play. So it's really like a baton has been passed from one character to the next. So it actually moves temporally forward, but we're getting shifting camera angles, if you like. And I just wanted to do that, and then to then go deeper in the second half of the novel, and for readers to travel with them through time, and to shift between their different perspectives. But I love the boxing ring thing too, and I found it excellent. I just had to.
It's
throw that
exciting,
in there.
But did you find you had to go back, Deborah, and kind of fix things because that couldn't have happened, because
Yes.
that would have happened there? That sort of
Yes.
quite structural reworking.
Yes,
Did you enjoy
yes.
that process?
I had a structural editor who did a great job at Fremantle Press, who found all the inconsistencies and problems. I found quite a few of my own. It can become quite a nightmare. She said the once she overlooked someone actually in their manuscript was pregnant for 8 years, and no one had, no one had picked it up.
That's the elephant at the centre of the novel.
So you really do have to kind of control time. Yeah, I didn't have that.
And tell me, how did it, for both of you, and either of you can go first, how did you proceed from, this is my 85,000 words, I now have a publisher? What was the step?
You go first.
So with me, I guess given the experience I'd had previously trying to push something to get published that wasn't ready, I sort of thought, look, this time I'm going to try and really make sure it's up to the best shape possible that I can get it into. And then I submitted it to a few different agents, and one particular agent gave me some, good structural feedback and a few suggestions. And I guess that's the most I got back from anyone. So I took her up on some of the advice and reached out to a structural editor who went on to become the editor of the novel, James Bean, who did a fantastic job of sort of guiding me through getting the structure right. And what helped is that I actually set the novel during COVID. So, and the lockdowns and everything that went on then plays a role in the novel. And he actually picked apart my timeline really cleverly, and it actually I had to stick to what actually happened for it to be realistic. So going through that process helped me get the timeline right, and that helped really sharpen up the manuscript itself. So when I went back to the agent, she was really happy with how it was, and then proceeded to, I guess, sign a deal with her to put it out to different agents.
So she became your agent. She's still your agent now?
Yes.
So she became your agent, and then she sent the book out. Do you know to how many publishers?
I think it was 20.
To 20. And do you know how many bites you got?
I got one, and she's
You only
sitting
need one.
just over there.
The great people from Echo Publishing. Yeah. Yes, We're absolutely magnificent. Again, smaller publishing house in Australia can really benefit you if you're a debut writer. You might think to yourself, I really want to be with a big publishing house, like a Random House or something. But actually what you want is a small publisher, because they can really concentrate on your book. They're not going to publish a whole bunch of them. They're not publishing hundreds. They're publishing a handful, so they can really take care of you. And how did you go towards getting a publisher, Lee?
Yes, so I'd spent a few years writing bits and pieces of it, and was able to bring it together during COVID when I had more time. So how did an editor, it was such a humongous beast of a novel, and it still is, but maybe a bit tidier than it was at the beginning. Had someone edit it, and then I pitched it to the Australian Society of Authors Literary Speed Dating, which I think Lisa mentioned, and that was so much fun. And my pitch went down quite well. I got quite a few manuscript requests. One agent, a very good one, had it for about 9 months and was quite interested, and then said no. And then another one had it for another chunk of time and said perhaps not. And so it was a year until I was dragging it around for a year. I admire Lisa for hanging in there for 3. That's truly admirable. But I considered that the book was, if half of it set in Western Australia, the other half all over the world, that maybe a West Australian publisher would be interested. And so I submitted it directly to Fremantle Press, and they took it within 2 weeks, and we're very excited.
And did you feel like I've been sitting around for a year, I should have just gone there first?
Well, I think you kind of have to do things to know about, you have to find out how to do things. So yes and no. It would have probably been sensible to just send it to them. But I also wanted to see, people say an agent's a really good idea, try and get an agent. So I did try. I could have tried harder and longer, but I just was like, I need this book out of my life. It needs to grow and become something else with readers, and so I was ready to let go at that point. So.
And just for those who don't know what literary speed dating is, it's not what you think. What is it?
I highly recommend it when your manuscript is fully finished, polished and ready to go, you can sign up for a 3-minute date with an agent or a publisher where you get to pitch your work, non-fiction, fiction, memoir, whatever it is, genre fiction, and you can pick up to a total of 4, I think, agents or publishers, and you get 2 goes, as in 2 sessions, so you can pitch up to 4 times for 1 manuscript, and it's a great way to get your work out there, and not many people have easy access to publishers and agents, and so it's a great opportunity.
And you did that through the Australian Society of Authors?
And they've been fantastic. I think every author and writer should
be members, indeed.
Definitely.
And tell me, once you get through the process, now you have your publisher. We heard from the other 2 writers about input into titles and covers. They concentrated quite a bit on the covers, but I'm interested to know the title. Fists of the Father is challenging, right? Like, a lot of people are going to pick that up and they might think, oh, that sounds... It's like it's in your face, isn't it? It really is. Tell me about the title.
Yeah, so it really came to me.
Hold it up so we can see it again.
Yeah, so the title came to me quite easily. I guess there's the biblical passage about the sins of the father, which sort of ties into the themes that are happening in the book. So it was never questioned once. It was just, I submitted it as this is the title.
Yep.
And it never came up in conversation, the title, really.
They really liked it. And the cover?
The cover, that was all the artist, Juliet and the team. They had a artist in mind that they work with, and he came back with 2 ideas. I think both were, well, the other one that we didn't go with, I actually quite liked, but this one I think was just a standout from the start.
You just held that up because you're looking at it too much. I want them to look at it. And do you know who this is?
I don't actually.
No, it's just stock, yeah? It's fantastic, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. So Australian, really Australian, isn't it? I think it's the Bond singlet makes it look so Australian. And tell me about your title and your cover.
Yeah, the title came to me
on
a train journey, and I went, oh, it's The Players, and but it wasn't always The Players. It began as because it's very much character study and the exploring the characters and how they each take on the role that they play in the play and wrestle with that for the rest of their lives, in a way. I thought of that name, the dramatis personae, which is at the beginning of a play, who plays who. So I wanted to work with the theatre metaphor. But then that, I don't know how many bestsellers can be have Latin names in their titles. So, just the Players.
A little bit of Shakespeare too, though.
Yes, the Players. Yes, from Hamlet too. Yes, the Players. That's the old-fashioned word for actors. Yeah. So yes, they're actors in stage and on life.
And did you have any input into the cover design?
The cover came to me with the girl on the front who resembles one of the characters in the book, the redhead. It felt to me like the matches, the redhead matches with that girl. But the cover was a bit different to begin with. It was much paler and had lots of peacocks on the background. I found it quite busy, and it looked like a girl's summer read, which is perfectly fine, but the book is quite literary, so I didn't want people to pick it up and think, oh, I'm just going to read this one summer sitting on the sand. And so I was a bit of tugging back and forth, and I asked for a darker background and something a little more sober, because there are dark elements, lots of twists and tensions and it's throughout. So yes, I was allowed a bit of input, which
you really were,
I was lucky, but they were not happy for me to have input. But in the end, everybody was happy. So
yeah. Because very, very often within a publishing house, the marketing and design teams will say, we know what catches the eye, and so they're not always that keen for the writer to be involved. So well done, congratulations. And I wanted to ask you both. Was there anyone that you were anxious about reading that? Is there anyone in your book that is going to recognise themselves?
I wouldn't say so. My mother says she sees me in the main character. No surprise, but I guess the only anxiety I had about releasing it is, as the book deals with a lot of very serious topics around domestic violence and intergenerational trauma. I guess I'm quite blessed that I haven't experienced any of that firsthand, but I guess the perception that some people may think I am drawing from real life experience was something I was a bit conscious about and tried to address in the dedication of the novel. But that for me was the only real sort of daunting factor in that regard.
And forgive me for not knowing this, but is your dad still with us?
No, unfortunately he passed away probably around a year or two before I'd published this.
Before you published it. Was he aware that you were doing it?
No, not at all. He actually introduced me to reading through fantasy, and I actually had written a fantasy novel when I was in my young 20s, and I printed it out and I'd given it to him to read, but yeah, unfortunately he ran out of time to read it.
What do you reckon he'd think?
It's not very good, that one, but I'd like to redo it one day and make it something that he'd like, yeah.
And tell me, was there anyone that you were anxious about reading it?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because some people are upset if they're not in the book, and so they immediately assume they have this great importance in your life, and somehow there'll be a version of one of your characters, and it's sort of their face falling. You have to sort of say, no, you're not in it. Who was in it? There's no, not particularly, no one's particularly based on anyone in particular. There may have been sort of friends and gestures and words and intimations of various kinds of people come into particular characters. I was terrified my mother would read it because there are 5 sex scenes in the book, actually. And the thought of her reading them was deeply excruciating for me. But actually, no, it's a bit bittersweet, because she actually didn't get to read the book because she passed away while I was revising it, much to her disappointment.
So did she know that it was coming?
Oh, she did. She
was excited for you?
She was excited, and in some ways connected, because she was a director, producer and choreographer, and very much in the theatre world. So might have found some of it fun. So
yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
When you become a published author, how long do you get to be sort of king of your castle, and how long before you have to start just putting out the rubbish again and not not being able? Is it still super exciting?
Yeah, I guess it's a funny feeling. For me, I hadn't told anyone that I was even an aspiring author, let alone had a deal to be published, with the exception of my wife, really. So for a lot of people, it's like, what? Like, you wrote a book? Like, my mum...
Like, I can read as well.
Yeah. A lot of people asked me if I'd paid to, get it produced, which was a little bit offensive. And that's probably me just not communicating, which is ironic, I guess. But yeah, so it was a funny experience to go through, sort of just letting that cat out of the bag, and work people and family and friends. So yeah, it's been a fun journey to be a part of.
Have you been into a bookshop and turned them out so they're closer to the front of the shop?
Yes, yeah, I did have a bit of a stage where I was telling my friends to go and move them to the bestseller section, things like that, which some
Number one
actually
bestseller.
Yeah.
And what about you? What's the experience been like for you, Deborah?
Immensely exciting, and I took out the garbage this morning, actually, so I never stopped taking that out. But yes, peaks and troughs. I think this is the 6th month of the book. Yes, massive launch. I was very blessed to have Geordie Williamson launch it, and then Tim Minchin do the Q&A, and that was hugely exciting, and lots of people. And then there's a kind of little bit of a kind of drop, but then you're up again doing events and visiting bookstores, and so yeah, immensely exciting, somewhat confronting, and of course an enormous privilege to be published. And it goes on. I think what's so nice is that the book has its own life independent quickly of you,
Yeah, and
actually.
you get to meet your readers
And
now.
people read it, and every reader reads a different book. It's one book, but it's a different book for every reader, and that's been very interesting as well. So.
Well, I cannot overstate what these two people, in fact, all four of the debut writers you've met today, have achieved. It is extraordinarily difficult to get a book published in Australia. It is, I mean, just taking the step to say you're going to write a book is such a big deal, and then to get one on the shelves is amazing. So if you have any questions for the two of them, now would be the time for you to ask them. We have two. We've got one here and one at the back. I'm going to come to you, Ange, and I'll go here first. Go ahead. Microphone is just coming around to you.
Can I just ask you the compare? How many books get published per year in Australia, and how many publishing houses are there? Thank you.
It's impossible to say. Nobody keeps track of exactly how many books are published each year in Australia. But I can tell you that I, as the literary editor of The Australian, have 200 books delivered to my desk every week. And of those, we select about 6 for review. So our rejection rate to have your book reviewed is about 97%. And from the 200 books that are delivered to me, some are sport, some are politics, some are fiction, some are crime fiction, some are women's fiction, some are, some are fantasy. Romantasy is huge at the moment. People having sex with dragons. It's so hot. It's so hot right now. You tend to get a lot of stuff at the same time. For a while there, you couldn't get enough soft porn, like 50 Shades of Grey. Everyone was like sending you soft porn. Yeah, I always say to people, I treat everybody equally. I don't mind whether you're self-published. I don't mind whether you're a small publisher, big publisher. I'm just entranced by the ideas. Sometimes people send me chocolates. That always works too. It is incredibly difficult to be published, incredibly hard to get a review, which is why I introduced into the pages of the books a notable books page, because I can do 8 titles on that page. Cheryl Arkle from Better Reading, an amazing woman, does some of them for me, and Samuel Bernard, who's a literary agent, does some of them for me as well. Incredibly difficult. Angie.
I think what's been, for me, particularly with the 4 authors, is the community that gathers
You've got a microphone there for you, love.
For me, with the 4 debut authors, is how much support you got from your publishers. Like, I kind of knew there was that element, but there was the structural editor, there was another editor, there was something else, there was a cover, it's this incredible family that you tend to create around you. If that family didn't come forward though, would you have gone down the self-publishing route, or would you have just said, oh, this is all just too hard?
Yeah, for me, I think I would have done the latter and just thought it was too hard. Because, it's sort of a bit daunting to go through, but when you have that support and encouragement around you of people that, can see that you've, got something that's, 95 or 96% there, and they just help you get those few extra steps, it's really encouraging, and it, ultimately will lead to a better product at the end of the day.
What about you, Deborah? Do you think you would have gone the route of self-publishing?
I haven't thought it through, but it's a perfectly respectable thing to do, self-publishing. I don't know is the answer. It is amazing to have to. It's like a sponsorship, isn't it? Really, being the publisher, dedicating energy to your book. I probably would have given up. I don't know, or made it into a funny play, or put it on here on stage one night and had a bunch of friends over to laugh at the jokes or something. I'm not sure. But it's a good question. Yeah.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? So we have 1,000, but I'm only going to be able to take one. The microphone's gone here already. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say I've read your book, Daniel. It was really, really good.
Thank you very
Couldn't
much.
believe you were a debut author after reading it. You said you did boxing, dabbling in it, but how did you research? Did you research? Did you get information for all those scenes? Not that there was a lot, but
Got someone to punch
it was
you?
very specific.
No, it was, I guess it's something that I have followed sort of closely since I was young, but I wouldn't say I'm a mad boxing fan, and I must admit there's times where I think that someone who really knows their boxing might reach out and say, oh, you sort of got this wrong with that wrong, bits and pieces. But no, I did do a lot of research, particularly around what other boxers had been to and trying to transition between the weight divisions and what was realistic and what wasn't. Because it's happening on a tight time schedule, you know, it was really, you know, impressive to learn what some boxers have put themselves through, you know, to meet certain requirements and, you know, get through different fights.
Yeah, and I just was reminded of, there is a brilliant boxing book called The Tao of Muhammad Ali, T-A-O of Muhammad Ali. The author escapes me, but remind me to send it to you. I'm going to squeeze your question in down the back.
Thank you. Do you have discipline when you're writing? Do you write every morning or every afternoon? I've been to Ernest Hemingway's house, and he used to get up every morning, stand at his typewriter until lunchtime, then go to the pub with his mates. But some people I know won't do anything till the sun goes down. What's your discipline?
I write in bursts. I generally go away somewhere, but now have moved to the place where I go away to, so I should probably write more often than I do. Just if I've got a chunk of time over a few days, take time off. I certainly don't write every day. I know everyone does something different. So.
I have to wrap it up. Australian writers, debuts, support them with everything you can. So important to tell Australian stories. Lisa, Jess, I don't know whether you're both still in the room. You might be in the signing. Oh, yeah, down the back there. And Deborah and Daniel, just congratulate them from the bottom of your heart. What they've achieved is amazing. Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Benny. Words on the Waves, the Pearl Beach Progress Association, everyone. It's really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. And a big thank you to Caroline. That was amazing. Wonderful work. Thank you.